Hey everybody, Matthew Coller here from US Bank Stadium following the Minnesota Vikings win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. And what a crazy win it was. The Vikings got up 29-0 and the Steelers marched all the way back and had a chance to tie the game at the very end. The ball goes out of the hands of the Pittsburgh Steelers tight end, knocked away by Harrison Smith in the end zone for the Vikings to preserve the win and get to 6-7 on the year and hang around in the playoff race as they've done all year. Every time that we think, well, this could be the game that really knocks them out, they still find a way. So let's talk about the tale of two halves. All right. The first half, the Vikings come out and look like they are a juggernaut team. Everything is working for them. Right off the bat, they're running the football effectively. They're finding Justin Jefferson. It looks like the entire offense is designed just to throw the ball to Justin Jefferson. And even a few shots down the field were just off the fingertips, but looked like, hey, if you keep doing that, you're going to hit on some big plays to the best wide receiver. So the Vikings get Delvin Cook going right away. Delvin Cook playing tonight, a big storyline. Cook had missed the last game after getting hurt against San Francisco, and it was unclear if he would be able to come back and also what type of shape he would be when he came back. Remember, in San Francisco, he was carted off the field with a dislocated shoulder, but he looked like A-plus Delvin Cook tonight at full speed as he was blasting through giant holes in the Pittsburgh defense. Now, remember, Pittsburgh's defense is not perfect, but their defensive line was considered one of the better defensive lines in the NFL. Well, that did not play out in the first half at all. Big holes for Delvin Cook, big run after big run, and the Vikings cruised to getting up in the first half of the game. Kirk Cousins was a little bit off at times in the first half, but it didn't really seem like much to be concerned about. When the Vikings kicked a field goal to go up 29-0, Cousins at the time only had 11 completions on 23 attempts. But again, this looked like one of those games where you would just say, oh, well, I mean, they ran the ball, they caused some turnovers, they played extremely well on defense. What does it matter what the final line of the quarterback is, right? We talk about putting up big stats in losses. Well, if you're not putting up big stats in a win, that's no big deal. But instead, Cousins threw 2 interceptions in the second half. That's not to blame him for both of them. One looked like the receiver fell. The other time it hit off Justin Jefferson and ended up being a tip to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But nonetheless, the Vikings continually opened the door for the Pittsburgh Steelers to have opportunities. In the first half, Ben Roethlisberger looked like he should be Ben Retiresberger because he was struggling so much. His throws were inaccurate. Everything looked like it was a short pass for the Pittsburgh offense, that they would need 20 plays to go down the field and score a touchdown. And oftentimes, especially since they weren't running the ball well in the first half, they didn't get anywhere. And they were punting, and then Roethlisberger came out in the second half, threw an interception, and it just looked like the route was about to be on. And then I don't know what happened to Ben Roethlisberger in the second half, but he came out and looked like a Hall of Fame quarterback. Now, he did have some assistance in looking like a Hall of Fame quarterback from Vikings corners. We saw pass interference that gave Pittsburgh a big gain. We saw a 30-yard touchdown pass from Roethlisberger. We saw him succeed in the red zone multiple times to open wide receivers. And then when he got his last chance, he had to go the entire length of the field and almost did so because he had open wide receivers. Chase Claypool made a great play down the sideline that would have been a pass interference anyway on Bashaud Breeland, and they come this close to one of the biggest comebacks in NFL history, and maybe within the time frame would have been the biggest in NFL history. And so we're met with playing the game of, well, the Vikings are still very much in the playoff race, and they're headed to Chicago with a chance to get back to 500. And when you look at the bottom of the NFC and the other teams that are chasing them, you have backup quarterbacks in Philadelphia and in Washington. I'm not sure when Jalen Hurts might return, but those are unimpressive teams. San Francisco is coming off of a loss. There's nobody else really impressive behind those teams like Atlanta, Carolina. They're sputtering quite a bit. So it really feels like a 3-team race. And 1 week after losing to Detroit, the Vikings feel right in the center of that race for a playoff spot. But then there's the other part of you that looks at this game and says, but you almost blew a 29-point lead. And it's really been the story of the season that they have not put together. Still, here we are through 13 football games, a full 60-minute game at any point this season. Even their best game of the year against Seattle, the first half, they allowed Seattle to be right in that game. And then the second half, they took care of business, which they have not been able to do really since. And against Detroit last week, they're down 20-6, and then they come back and ultimately lose the game on the last play. Then this is the same sort of thing in reverse, where they get way ahead and they allow the opponent to come back. I mean, it's sort of the same old story, and there's really no solution at this point because the secondary and the individuals who are covering wide receivers are not going to change. The fact that the Vikings can't put a whole lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks in clutch situations does not seem like it's going to change, especially when you're trying to rush 3 or 4 to try to cover everybody that you can. 4 receivers are coming out. They just have not been able to create 4-man pressure. Early in this game, when they were in situations where they could blitz more often, they sacked Roethlisberger, and the Pittsburgh offensive line struggled quite a bit. Center Kendrick Green was having big problems even just snapping the ball to Roethlisberger. They were one of the first teams, I think, all year not to really move the Vikings defensive line and create a lot of rushing lanes in the first half. In the second half, they had a little more success. But the bottom line of this game is kind of fuzzy because you could really interpret it either way of what a disappointing win where you made it far closer than it needed to be, or you could look at it as it doesn't really matter whether it's a disappointing win or a great win at this point in the season because the Vikings are in the midst of a playoff race and you'll take them. And hey, it's Thursday Night Football and crazy things can happen. So let's also talk about a little more about Delvin Cook. He ends up with over 200 yards. And if he's back to close to 100%, even if his shoulder is injured, but really his legs, and he looked like he had more burst today than I think he's looked really since week 2 against Arizona. That changes the dynamic of the offense a little bit because they've mostly had to rely this year on their passing game and on Justin Jefferson to drive their success. Now, Adam Thielen was out of this game, and KJ Osborne stepped in, caught a 62-yard touchdown pass. It was really the play that saved the game for the Vikings because if that doesn't happen, there's a decent chance that Pittsburgh is able to tie the game or get one extra possession to have a chance at that. And instead, that gave them a little extra breathing room to at least force Pittsburgh into a touchdown and a 2-point conversion at the end, which they came ever so short of coming up with. But KJ Osborne had that big catch. He also only ended up with 3 catches on 9 targets tonight. And if you look elsewhere for other receivers who stepped up in the absence of Adam Thielen, well, you won't find them. So this night we come away with saying, if Adam Thielen isn't back soon, this could continue to be a problem for the Vikings that they are so centered on Justin Jefferson. And early in the game, that was working. He caught a touchdown. He did the gritty, all that sort of thing. But as the game went along, Pittsburgh started to double him more often. Why they didn't do it from the start, I do not know. But they started to do it more often. And the result was a lot less success for Kirk Cousins throwing Justin Jefferson's way in the second half. So they come away with a win, 6-7. They get a break before they will have to go to Chicago, or it has just been a house of horrors historically for the Minnesota Vikings, but that is a struggling Chicago team. As we speak right now, they'll play this weekend, and we'll see what happens. But the Vikings always are finding ways to make it interesting, even when it should not have been remotely interesting. And of course, at Purple Insider, we are here for you. So make sure you listen to the full post-game reaction wherever you get your podcasts, and keep it here subscribed to our channel to get our Purple Insider extra videos. And we will see you next time.